Hello friends. So today we are going to see another interesting SQL interview question. This interview question comes quite often, and no, this is frequently asked in multiple company interview rounds. And the question is, they give a table, right? So it could be a gold rate or exchange rate or stock rate. On daily basis, there will be a rate fluctuating rate, and right, so here if you see 18 is one rate, 38,500 gold rate, and 20th is 39,000, it has increased, and then 24th it has increased to 40,000, and again it has come down. So like that, it is a fluctuating gold rate, right? So the question is, there is a table which tracks daily changing gold rate. Write a single SQL query to generate gold rate range, date range output as shown using the daily gold rate table. Using this table, we are supposed to generate a range kind of table, start day to end day. Okay, this was the rate. So if you see, instead of showing it in records, we need to show a single record, right? Instead of showing multiple records for the continuous days, we need to show as a single record from this date to this date. This was the rate, and 20 to 22. Instead of showing three different records, we need to show as a single record with the from day and start date and end date. Okay, so this is a requirement. This comes quite frequently. So I'm going to show you two interesting approach. Okay, so two interesting approach how we can solve this problem in general for any kind of this pattern problem. So first approach is, right, let's say this is a question that they have given, right? This in this sequence only they have given. So first find out and separate out the date change, the rate change. For example, with a line that I put a line because the date got rate gets changed. Okay, so this gives an idea. Okay, so the rate change we are just marking with this thing, and let's say, and now let's find out the dates on which the rate got changed. Okay, mark all the dates when the rate got changed. Okay, so all these dates is what we need, because they are nothing but the start date, right? They are nothing but the start date. So let's see how we can find the start date in SQL wise, right? So for this purpose, I have created a table called daily gold rate with a column of date and rate. Okay, I've inserted the same records into the table, and when I execute these two columns, I get the same value that we see in the Excel. This is the input, right? So now we need to write a query for this approach, right? So finding the start date. So how we can find a start date? So we need to find a start date, because start date is nothing but the previous rate is different, and this rate is different. For example, we can identify 20th as a first day of a group because this date is different from the previous record. So we need to compare with the previous record. Okay, so I'm going to write a query to compare with the previous record. Okay, so let's put a date, comma, rate, comma. Okay, I'm going to do a self join comparing with the date with the previous record. So let's call this as a dot. I'm doing a dot rate and date I need, and I'm going to do a self join. Join daily gold rate B. Okay, on what condition? A dot date minus 1 is equal to B dot date. So what I'm doing is, second record, this is the current record and this is the previous record. Okay, so that's why the previous record, I'm subtracting the current record's date minus 1 to fetch the previous day record. And the condition is the rate should not be the same. A dot rate should not be same as B dot rate. Right, so if I execute this query, okay, I think there is some not equal to, okay, not equal to condition. Okay, so now when I execute, it gives exactly the ones which we marked in the yellow, 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, this is also yellow. 7, totally 7, but we see only 6 here. Which value is missing? I think 18 is missing. 18 is missing because there is no previous record, right? Because there is no previous record, it has the inner join has removed that record. So for that we need to go for outer join, right? So let's go with the left join. Okay, so left join, and obviously as we go for left join, we need to put is null condition, right? If the previous day there is no record, then I'm just defaulting with a 0 rate. Okay, so now when I execute, I'm getting for 18th also. Okay, so now I've got for 18th also. So what data set that we have got right now? We have got this data set, right? So we have got a reduced data set, and this is the result that we are getting. So this is nothing but the start date and end date, start date, right? So this is the start date we have got, and rate we know, and we need to find the end date. So how to find the end date is the next question. So for that, okay, so if you see here, end date is nothing but the, for example, 18th record and 19th, for this record, the next start day minus 1. For example, 1908 minus, this is the end date, right? So this is the end date. The previous records start day minus 1, right, will give us that formula. For example, if I put this in a formula, it is nothing but the previous record minus 1. Okay, 19. So similarly, if I copy paste the same value here till here, it gives exactly for us the end date. Okay, so the next records start day minus 1. That is the logic. So now we need to see how we can use the logic in SQL. So for that, I'm going to go with the CTE. I'm going to use this as a CTE. Okay, so let me move this for readability, and I'm going to read data from the CTE. Okay, let's validate this first. Okay, so the CTE is working fine. Now we need to, what we need to do, we need to go for a self join. For the CTE, we need to go for the self join, and we need to compare with the next record, and then minus 1. So next record, the maximum record, right? So I'm going to compare it with I'm going to call this as a CTE A. What I'm going to do is I'm going to write I'm going to call this as C, and then C dot date is nothing but the start date, and then I need to find the end date. End date, I know what is the date. Okay, so if I execute this, right, let me call this as C dot date. So if I execute this, we are getting exact the table, the expected output, except that the end date needs to be computed. So in date, I'm going to compute. I'm going to write a query, inline function subquery that I'm going to write. I'm going to write select from same CTU, because it's a self join, right? I'm going to call this as a D, where I'm going to join, or where I'm going to put a condition where D dot rate, D dot date should be greater than C dot date, because I'm fetching for 18 to find the end date. I need to select all these record and then find the minimum. Then I will get 20. So I'm going to find the minimum of D dot date. Okay, and then I need to subtract by my 1, right? Because we saw 20 we are going to get, and then we need to subtract by minus 1. Then we'll get 19. So yeah, I've written the query. So let's see, when we execute, let's see what result we get. Yeah, we get 18, we get 19 is the end date, because it is this record's value minus 1. And similarly for this record, end value is nothing but this, all these records minimum, yeah, greater than 20, and the minimum record, this record minus 1, then 22. So like this we have successfully written a query using a CTE to fetch the end date for all these records. Okay, because I think in this query the end date is null because it's still open. So that way it is still showing, we can show it as a null for the last record. Okay, so this is one way of solving this problem. This is one way of solving the problem. Okay, so is there any other way, better way to solve this problem? So we are going to see another way of solving this problem. So another way of solving the problem is looking at the data totally rate wise. Now we are seeing date wise, right? So I am asking us to look at this problem, look at this from a rate point of view. Let's sort first rate, right? So all 38,500, all 39,500, 39,000, then 39,000. So sort all these and then create a sub, and then next order is date. First sort is by rate and then by date, right? So to sort all these this thing. Don't worry about the missing date, that's fine, right? So all these this format, and then we can put a row number 1 2 3 4 5 6, right, based on the rate. Whenever there is a, for this subgroup, generate 1 2 3 4 5 6, generate for this rate 1 2 3 4 5 6 7. Okay, so like that we can generate in SQL, right? We know that we can use partition, so window operation we can perform because the row number can be generated, and the partition is by rate because the rate we are generating the row number for each rate, right? And then the order by is date. So I'm going to write a statement. So what I'm going to do it is, I'm the second approach, right? Approach 2 will be, I am going to put a dot rate comma date. I think date is first, and then a dot rate, and then and from which table, daily gold rate, and we need to generate row number over partition by rate, a dot rate, and then order by e dot date, right? So we can call this as a row number. So for let's see what result that we are getting. Okay, I need to put an alias of a. Okay, so now when I execute, okay, this is a dot, sorry. When I execute, we are getting the same result that we are seeing outside, right, in the Excel. Like for a date wise it has sorted, and then within that date wise the sorting has happened, the partition has happened on the rate, and the date wise it is sorted, and it has generated row number. Okay, so what we can do with this row number, before that, so what is the observation? So if you see, the row number increases as the date increases, right? As the date increases, the row number also increases. Using this logic, right, can I generate something called base date? For example, if I subtract this row number with the date, so what I will get? 17. So if I subtract these two, 17. So for these two record, the date, base date, when we subtract with the row number, the same date comes. That is one interesting pattern that you can see. For example, similarly, for between 19 and 26 there are missing dates. Let's leave that. But here if you see, all are continuous dates. If I subtract 3 from 26, we get 23. 4 from 27, 23. So 5 from 28, 23. So all these these records get same date. Okay, so I'm going to call that as a base date. Okay, so I'm going to see anything I can do with it. For example, if I subtract these two and then add one day, just for what the formula is, subtract the 18, then subtract 1, and then adding plus 1, because then only I will get the same date. Just for that I have added plus 1. Okay, otherwise plus 1 is not needed, but just for our understanding, then only if you see the base date, we will get the same starting date. That's why I'm just adding plus 1. So for all these records, if you see, we are getting the same date. This may not be the starting day, but at least the same day is coming. Let's stick to that. Same date is coming. Same base date. Let's call that as a base date. It's not a starting date, it's a base date. Same base date is coming for these records, right? So similarly, you will find that same base date we'll get for the continuous dates where the rate has not changed. Okay, let's do that first. Okay, till that, what I need to do is I need to do that here. So what I need to do here is I need to subtract the row number and then add +1, right? So I will let me first add and then subtract this exactly, right? The row number I need to subtract. So for that I'm just copy pasting the same formula that I've just written. I'm calling this as the base date. Okay, so let's see what result that we see. So if you see, what I've done is I've just taken the date, I've subtracted the row number and then added +1. Okay, so we are going to see the base date. So you will see the same date is there for these two continuous dates. This is a base date, and for base date is the same for these 4 records because all are having same rate and continuous dates. So with that, now we have identified this. Okay, so with this, so now if you see for the same base date, if I find the start date and date, then that will give me the answer. For the same base date, if I group by and find min and max, then that will give me the start date and end date, right? And rate also is available. So that's what we need to find out. For example, if I unhide this, so you'll see for this base date records, right, the start minimum and maximum will give us the start date and end date. For this base date records, the start date and end date will give us the minimum and maximum will give us the start date and end date. So now what I need to do it is I'm going to use this as a CTE for this approach. Okay, for this approach, and let me move this for better readability, and then I'm going to select as usual, select star from CTE. Okay, and then we need to okay, so let's see. First, before CTE, I think we need to put the semicolon for this one so that doesn't throw warning, because CTE has to be the first statement, right? So yeah, so now for this CTE is working fine. I'm going to implement the logic, the group by base date, and then min and max I need to find. So I'm going to group by base date, comma, rate. Okay, so I'm going to group by, and within that rate wise also I need to group, then only I can put it in the select statement. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to find minimum of the date. Let me call this as a start date, and maximum of the date will give us the end date, and then the rate. Okay, and then we need to order by start date. Okay, so let's see what result that we get. Yeah, so we have got start day of 18 and 19, and this is a rate. Start day of 20 and 22, we are getting this rate for the same rate. This is the start date and end date. So we are getting the exact result of what is expected. So just to summarize, we have seen two approaches. First approach is so I will show it in Excel also. First approach is date wise we started. And we compared with the next day, previous date. And if the rate is different, then we are marking them as the first record, that there is a date change flag, right? Date change, and we are taking that as a CT. So we are getting subset of record, right? This is what we got. Then from here we compared we did a self join of CTE from that record, and then greater than the record, and then minimum. So minimum amongst for 18, right? For 18th, greater than means all these record will come. Among that minimum is 20. So then that records -1 will give us the end date. So that is how we calculated. We arrived at the end date, right? Start date and end date we kind of arrived at. That is the first approach, right? Code wise, if you see, we created a CTE first. We did this computation of comparing with the previous date, rates of different previous date. We got that, we put it in the CTE, and then we used the self join CTE compared with the we arrived at the end date by taking all the records which are having greater than this date, and then the minimum, the smallest, then minus 1. So this is the first approach. And second approach is what we did is the approach we started with the rate. So we first sorted based on the rate and then date wise, and then we generated row number. Okay, and we saw a pattern. If the date and row number we subtract, we get something called base date. We can call that as a base date, and you will see for all the continuous records the base date remains the same. So we can use that as a group, right? We can group by this and then find the minimum and maximum record of each of these records within the same base date, right? For here we get 26 and 29 as a min and max, right? So we can use that as a start date and end date, So for that, the query we have written is first CTE to arrive at the generate the row number and then generate the base date logic, right? By adding by subtracting the row number and then adding plus 1, and then use that as a CTE and then just find min and max, right? And then group by base date, because base date remains the same for all the continuous dates where the rate doesn't change. Okay, with that logic we can achieve this result, right? So I hope this SQL exercise were useful and interesting, right? So this approach can be used for any daily rate kind of problem, right? Where they are asking us to compare with the previous record, next record, the date change, rate change for stock and gold and currency. We can use this approach, one of these approach, to solve the problem, whichever that you think is appropriate for your database and scenario. You can use that. If this video is very much useful and informative, like it and comment it and share it. Please subscribe to the channel and inform your friends, share it with your friends also who wants to learn SQL. Thank you so much.